Maxwell Carter stood at the entrance of the Orion Heights apartment complex, a small box of personal items in his arms. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as he looked up at what would be his new home. After 15 years of service in the Navy as an engineer, he was ready for a quieter life. His body carried the marks of his service, a slight limp from an injury during the alien conflict that had changed humanity forever. Just need to find apartment 312. He muttered to himself, shifting the box to his other arm. The complex wasn't fancy, but it was clean and only 10 minutes from the VA hospital where he went twice a month for checkups. That proximity was worth more than luxury amenities. As Maxwell walked toward the building entrance, he spotted an empty parking space near the front door. Perfect. He went back to his car, a modest blue sedan with a small military service sticker on the back window, and pulled it into the vacant spot. The moving truck with the rest of his belongings would arrive tomorrow. For now, he just wanted to get inside and rest. He had just locked his car when a sharp voice called out behind him. "Hey, you can't park there." Maxwell turned to see a thin man with graying hair marching toward him. The man wore khaki pants pulled too high and a polo shirt with the complex logo stitched on the pocket. "I'm sorry," Maxwell said politely. "That spot is reserved," the man said, pointing to the empty space where Maxwell had parked. "You'll need to move your vehicle." Maxwell looked at the parking spot, then at the surrounding area. There were no signs indicating reserved parking, no paint markings, nothing to suggest the spot wasn't available to residents. "I don't see any reserved signs," Maxwell said calmly. "I just moved in today, apartment 312. The man's expression changed slightly when he looked at Maxwell more closely. His eyes narrowed. "I'm Harold Simmons, the property manager," he said, his tone cooling further. "And I decide where people park around here. Some spots are kept for preferred residents." Maxwell caught the meaning behind Harold's words. It wasn't the first time he had encountered such attitudes. He took a deep breath. "Mr. Simmons, I selected this apartment specifically because it's close to the VA hospital. I'm a veteran with a service-connected disability. Having a spot near the entrance would be helpful." Harold crossed his arms. "We have plenty of people who claim special needs. If everyone got what they wanted, where would we be? You people always expect special treatment." A woman walking her dog slowed down nearby, clearly listening to the exchange. She frowned at Harold's words but kept walking after an uncomfortable pause. "I'm not asking for special treatment," Maxwell said, keeping his voice steady. "Just clarification on the parking policy. If there's an official system for assigned spots, I'm happy to follow it." Harold stepped closer. "Look, I've been running this place for 20 years. I know who belongs where. And I'm telling you that spot is reserved for good residents who've proven themselves. You just got here. Park in the back lot with the other new folks." Maxwell noticed how Harold emphasized certain words, how his gaze held a challenge. This wasn't about parking. This was about making sure Maxwell understood where Harold thought he belonged. "I see," Maxwell said. "Is this policy written anywhere in the rental agreement?" "I don't recall seeing anything about tiered parking privileges." Harold's face flushed. "Don't get smart with me, just move your car before I have it towed." Maxwell considered his options. He could escalate the situation, demand to see written policies, or simply move his car to avoid conflict on his first day. The box in his arms was getting heavy, and his leg was beginning to ache. "I'll move it for now," Maxwell said. "But I'd like to discuss this further when we both have time. There seems to be some confusion about the policies here." Harold seemed pleased by what he perceived as compliance. "Good. Glad we understand each other. Backlot is that way." He pointed toward the far end of the complex. As Maxwell walked back to his car, he noticed a few faces watching from windows and balconies. This wasn't the welcome he had hoped for, but he had faced worse, much worse. He drove to the back lot and found a space far from any entrance. The walk would be difficult on his bad days, but he would manage. He always did. Inside his new apartment, Maxwell set down his box and took out a small notebook. He wrote down the date, time, and a brief description of the encounter with Harold. Names, exact words, possible witnesses, old habits from the service. Document everything. leave nothing to memory alone. The apartment was empty except for a folding chair and a sleeping bag Maxwell had brought for his first night. Tomorrow, the furniture would arrive. He sat in the chair and looked out the window, at the distant stars just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Those same stars that had once brought terror now seemed peaceful again. His phone buzzed with a text message from his former commanding officer, Captain Diane Wells. "Settled in yet, Chief? Remember the VA appointment Tuesday? Dr. Lin wants to check that new prosthetic connection." Maxwell smiled slightly. Even retired, the captain looked out for her people. He texted back, "All moved in, Captain. One small welcoming committee issue, nothing I can't handle." 3 dots appeared as she typed her response. "Local problems?" Maxwell paused before responding. "Nothing worth reporting yet. We'll keep you updated." He put the phone down and stared back at the stars. He had survived humanity's first contact with hostile aliens. He could certainly handle one difficult property manager. Still, something told him Harold Simmons wasn't going to make his new life easy. Maxwell unpacked his few personal items. A photo of his unit from the defense of Chicago. A small piece of alien metal that had been surgically removed from his leg, now fashioned into a paperweight, and a medal in a case that he placed in the back of a drawer. He didn't display his commendations anymore. As night fell completely, Maxwell checked the locks twice before settling into his sleeping bag. Old habits again. Always secure the perimeter. New day tomorrow, he whispered to himself, an affirmation that had carried him through countless difficult nights. New beginning. But as he drifted off to sleep, Harold's dismissive words echoed in his mind. This battle might be different from those he'd fought before, but Maxwell Carter had never been one to retreat from a fight, especially when it was about something as fundamental as respect. A week passed since Maxwell Carter moved into Orion Heights. The days fell into a routine. He woke early, exercised despite the pain in his leg, and spent his afternoons sorting through job applications. Companies claimed to value veteran experience, but when they saw alien conflict survivor on his medical disclosure forms, their interest cooled. No one wanted to risk hiring someone who might have lingering trauma. Maxwell had hoped for a fresh start at Orion Heights, but Harold Simmons made sure he never felt welcome. Each day brought new complaints. His trash wasn't sorted correctly. His blinds were the wrong shade. His walking was too loud for the downstairs neighbors. Small things, but they added up. Other residents noticed. Some offered small kindnesses. A nod in the hallway holding the door open when they saw him coming, but most kept their distance, unwilling to draw Harold's attention. On Thursday morning, Maxwell had his regular appointment at the VA hospital. Dr. Lin checked the connection between his synthetic nerve grafts and his damaged leg tissue. "The integration is holding well," Dr. Lin said, tapping on her tablet. "Any unusual sensations, numbness, sharp pains?" "Same as always," Maxwell replied. "Worse when it rains." Dr. Lin nodded. "The alien metal fragments left trace elements we still don't fully understand. Even after removal, they affect surrounding tissue." Maxwell rubbed his thigh where the largest piece had been extracted. "Small price to pay. Chicago would have fallen without those defense shields." Dr. Lin gave him a rare smile. "Yes, your engineering team saved millions. Though I notice you don't wear your medal." Maxwell looked away. "Those days are behind me. I'm just trying to be normal now." The appointment ran longer than expected. A new doctor wanted to study his case, something about using his neural recovery as a model for other veterans. Maxwell answered the same questions he'd answered 100 times before, then finally headed back to Orion Heights. As he turned into the complex, rain began to fall. His leg ached with the change in weather, each step sending dull pain up his spine. The back parking lot seemed farther away than ever. He noticed an empty visitor spot near the front entrance. Just this once, he decided, he would use it. Just long enough to get inside where he could rest. He had just turned off the engine when a sharp knock came at his window. Harold Simmons stood there, rain darkening his shirt, his face twisted with anger. Next to him was a large metal boot clamp. Maxwell sighed and opened the door. "Mr. Simmons, I was just—" "Get out," Harold snapped. "You're being towed." Maxwell stepped out into the rain. "I've just come from the VA. My leg is—" "I don't care where you've been," Harold interrupted. "This is a visitor spot." "Are you a visitor?" "No. You live here, and your spot is in the back lot where I told you to park." Maxwell noticed Harold already had the boot in position next to his front tire. "That seems unnecessary. I can move the car now." "Too late," Harold said, kneeling to attach the boot despite the rain soaking his pants. "This will teach you to follow rules." Several residents watched from the covered walkway. Among them was a young woman Maxwell had seen coming home in legal office attire. Amelia Reeves, apartment 318. She had her phone out, pointed toward them. "Mr. Simmons," Maxwell said calmly, "there's nothing in the rental agreement about assigned parking or visitors' spaces being off limits to residents in special circumstances." Harold stood up, getting closer to Maxwell's face. "Listen, I've had enough of you people thinking you're special. Veteran or not, you follow the same rules as everyone else. Actually, with your attitude, maybe you need to follow them even more carefully." "You people," Maxwell repeated quietly. Harold's face reddened. "You heard me. This complex was peaceful before you moved in. Always questioning, always wanting exceptions." Maxwell remained still, aware of the growing audience. "I'd like to see the official parking policy, please." "I am the policy," Harold shouted, drops of rain flying from his lips. 20 years I've run this place. 20 years without your kind causing problems." Maxwell felt an old stillness come over him, the same calm that had saved his life during the alien attacks. "My kind?" "Troublemakers," Harold hissed. "Acting entitled because you wore a uniform." Maxwell noticed Amelia stepping closer, phone still recording. Other residents had gathered despite the rain. "I'd like to go inside now," Maxwell said evenly. "We can discuss this tomorrow when—" Harold put his hand on Maxwell's chest and pushed. "You'll stay right here until I say otherwise. In fact, let me see some ID. I want to make sure you're even supposed to be here." The push wasn't hard, but it crossed a line. Maxwell looked down at the wet handprint on his shirt. He had faced death among the stars, had rebuilt defense systems while alien weapons tore through Earth's atmosphere. And now this man was putting hands on him over a parking space. "You want to see my ID?" Maxwell asked quietly. "Now," Harold demanded, "or I call the police about a trespasser." Maxwell reached for his wallet. The residents watching grew silent. Even the rain seemed to pause. He pulled out his military identification card and his security clearance badge, holding them so Harold could clearly see them. Harold squinted, the rain making it hard to read the cards. Then his eyes widened. He stepped back. "Chief Engineer, First Contact Defense Initiative," Harold read aloud, his voice suddenly lower. "Level 10 Security Clearance Alien Technology Integration Program." Maxwell said nothing. He hadn't shown these cards to anyone outside the military since his retirement. He preferred to live quietly. But Harold had pushed too far. Is this real?" Harold asked, suddenly uncertain. "Would you like to call the number on the back to verify?" Maxwell offered. Harold stared at the cards, at the official seals, at the signature of the Joint Chiefs. His face went from red to pale. Amelia stepped forward, her phone still recording. "Mr. Simmons, I believe the car boot you're installing isn't authorized by management company policy. I've checked the tenant handbook quite thoroughly as part of my paralegal work." Harold looked from Maxwell to Amelia, then to the other watching residents. The rain had soaked him completely now. He looked small suddenly. I was just enforcing the rules," he stammered. An older man called from the walkway. "What rules, Harold? You make them up as you go." Maxwell put his cards away. "Please remove the boot from my vehicle, Mr. Simmons." Harold hesitated, then knelt, to remove the boot with shaking hands. As he worked, Maxwell noticed a message flash on his phone. It was from Captain Wells. "Security alert triggered on your clearance ID scan. Everything okay, Chief?" Maxwell replied quickly. All clear, Captain. Just a misunderstanding with the landlord. 3 dots appeared, then. Need intervention? Maxwell looked at Harold struggling with the boot in the rain, his authority crumbling in front of the residents he had bullied for years. Negative, Maxwell typed. Situation resolving naturally. The rain stopped by evening, but the storm inside Orion Heights was just beginning. Maxwell sat in his apartment, staring at his security clearance badge on the kitchen table. He hadn't planned to reveal his past so soon, or so publicly. Now, it was out there, and there would be questions. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the confrontation with Harold. Captain Wells had sent 3 more messages, each more concerned than the last. News traveled fast in military circles. If she knew about the incident, others would too. A knock at his door pulled Maxwell from his thoughts. He moved carefully, his legs still aching from the rain and stress. Through the peephole, he saw Amelia Reeves from apartment 318, the paralegal, who had recorded everything. Maxwell opened the door halfway. Ms. Reeves. Mr. Carter, she replied. I wanted to make sure you're okay. What Harold did was completely out of line. Maxwell nodded. I appreciate your concern. I'm fine. Amelia held up her phone. I have the whole thing recorded. Harold has been bullying residents for years, but this time, he crossed a line. Physical assault is grounds for immediate termination according to state property management regulations. I'd rather not make this a bigger issue than it already is, Maxwell said. Amelia's eyebrows rose. Bigger issue? Mr. Carter, you're kind of famous now, at least in this building. She lowered her voice. Everyone's talking about your ID badge. Were you really part of the first contact defense team? Maxwell sighed. This was exactly what he'd wanted to avoid. Ms. Reeves, Amelia, please. Amelia, what happened today was unfortunate, but I'd prefer to move forward quietly. She studied him for a moment. The quiet approach hasn't worked with Harold. He's been discriminating against residents for years. The management company needs to see this video. Before Maxwell could respond, his phone rang. The screen showed a number he hadn't seen in almost a year. Defense Department, Special Projects Division. I need to take this, he said. Thank you for checking on me. Amelia nodded. Think about what I said. This isn't just about you anymore. She handed him a business card. If you change your mind. Maxwell closed the door and answered the phone. Carter. Chief Engineer, came a formal voice he recognized immediately. General Rivera, his former commanding officer. We received an alert that your security credentials were displayed in a civilian setting. Care to explain? Maxwell sat down, rubbing his leg. Sir, it was a minor dispute with my landlord. Nothing security related. That's not how the system works, Carter. When level 10 clearance badges get flashed around civilian housing complexes, we notice. With respect, sir, I was provoked. The general's voice softened slightly. We've reviewed security footage from the area. Your landlord appears to be quite the charmer. Maxwell froze. You accessed private security cameras? National security? Protocols, Chief. Your clearance may be inactive, but it still triggers our systems. The moment you showed that badge, facial recognition picked up everyone within 50 feet. Maxwell closed his eyes. He'd forgotten how deep the surveillance went. I apologize for the false alarm, sir. No need. Actually, this timing might be fortunate. We've been trying to reach you. Maxwell's stomach tightened. Sir? The Centauri technology you helped integrate into our defense systems has applications we didn't foresee. Civilian applications, medical primarily. Maxwell looked down at his leg. The alien metal that had wounded him had also, ironically, led to breakthroughs in neural repair. The Defense Department is partnering with Orion Medical Technologies for development, General Rivera continued. They need someone who understands both the technology and its biological implications. I'm not looking to go back, sir. This wouldn't be military, Carter. Civilian contractor. Good pay, flexible hours. And you'd be helping other veterans like yourself. Maxwell was silent for a long moment. "I'll consider it. That's all I ask. A representative will contact you tomorrow." The general paused. "And Carter, that landlord situation, it's being handled." The line went dead. Maxwell set down his phone. Being handled could mean many things, none of which he could control. Another knock at the door. Maxwell stood warily. This time it was Mrs. Chen from apartment 203, an elderly woman who had nodded to him once in the mailroom. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, "I bring you this." She held out a covered dish. "Traditional dumplings, my way to say thank you." Maxwell accepted the dish, confused. "Thank you. For what?" Mrs. Chen smiled. "My grandson was stationed in Chicago during the attacks. Alien ships would have destroyed his unit if the shields hadn't held. You built those shields, yes?" Word had spread even faster than Maxwell feared. "I was part of a team, ma'am. Team or not, my grandson lives because of your work." She patted his hand. "Harold has been cruel to many of us, making up rules, threatening elderly residents with eviction for small complaints. No one stood up to him before." Maxwell wasn't sure how to respond. He hadn't intended to stand up to anyone. He just wanted peace. "Eat while warm," Mrs. Chen instructed, then turned to leave. "Many people here grateful to you, for both things." As she walked away, Maxwell saw several doors quickly close. People had been watching, listening. Back inside, Maxwell set down the dumplings and checked his email. There were 3 new messages from the property management company that owned Orion Heights. The first apologized for the unfortunate incident. The second requested a meeting to address concerns about staff conduct. The third, sent just minutes ago, informed all residents that Harold Simmons had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Maxwell's phone buzzed with another message from Captain Wells. "Just got word from Rivera. I told you. That badge would cause trouble one day." He typed back. "Not sure if it's trouble or opportunity yet." Wells responded quickly. "Both, usually. Dinner next week? The old team wants to see you." Before Maxwell could answer, his phone chimed with an incoming video call. The ID showed Defense Department Special Projects. Taking a deep breath, Maxwell accepted the call. A woman in a lab coat appeared on screen. "Chief Engineer Carter, Dr. Eliza Dawson, Orion Medical Technologies." Her eyes were bright with enthusiasm. "I can't tell you how long we've been trying to reach you." "So I've heard," Maxwell said cautiously. "Your work on integrating alien neural transmission systems with human technology was years ahead of its time," Dr. Dawson continued. "We've been building on your foundation, but we've hit some roadblocks that only someone with your unique experience could help solve." Maxwell looked down at his leg. "My experience as a test subject, you mean?" Dr. Dawson's expression softened. "As both engineer and recipient. You understand the technology and what it feels like in human tissue. That combination is invaluable." For the first time in months, Maxwell felt a spark of purpose. His old work? Helping people in new ways. A chime from his laptop interrupted. It was a news alert. He turned the screen to see the headline. "Decorated veteran engineer from First Contact Defense Initiative assaulted by discriminatory landlord." Below was a still image from Amelia's video, showing Harold pushing Maxwell. The story had gone public. Maxwell turned back to Dr. Dawson, who was looking at something on her own screen. "I see you've become newsworthy, Chief Engineer," she said. "Not by choice," Maxwell replied. Dr. Dawson smiled. "Few heroes choose the spotlight. It usually finds them anyway." 2 days after the parking lot incident, Orion Heights buzzed with activity. News vans parked along the street outside the complex. Reporters tried to get past the front gate for interviews. The management company had hired temporary security to keep them out. Maxwell watched from his window, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands. His phone had 57 missed calls. His email inbox was full. Old colleagues, news stations, veterans groups. Everyone wanted to speak with the hero from the First Contact Defense Initiative who had been assaulted by his landlord. Maxwell had spoken to only 3 people: Captain Wells, General Rivera, and Dr. Dawson from Orion Medical Technologies. He'd agreed to meet with Dr. Dawson's team next week about the civilian application of alien technology. It felt good to have a purpose again, even if he hadn't planned on returning to that world. A knock at the door broke his thoughts. Maxwell sighed, expecting another neighbor with food or thanks. He was surprised to find Jason Lee, the property management company's regional director, standing there in a pressed suit. "Mr. Carter," Lee said, extending his hand, "I cannot express how deeply sorry we are for what happened. I've come personally to address the situation." Maxwell shook his hand cautiously. "That's not necessary." "It absolutely is," Lee insisted. "Harold Simmons has been terminated, effective immediately. We've reviewed Ms. Reeves's video and the security footage. His behavior was unacceptable." Maxwell nodded. "I appreciate that. Additionally," Lee continued, "we'd like to offer you 6 months of rent-free living as compensation for your distress." Maxwell frowned. "That seems excessive." Lee looked uncomfortable. "Honestly, Mr. Carter, our legal team insisted. They're concerned about potential discrimination lawsuits." "I have no intention of suing," Maxwell said. "Nevertheless, the offer stands." Lee handed him an envelope. "This contains the official paperwork. Also, we're implementing new policies complex-wide about assigned parking and accommodations for veterans and residents with medical needs." Maxwell took the envelope. "That's a positive change, at least." Lee hesitated, then added, "The company would also like to invite you to join our resident advisory board. Your perspective would be valuable as we revise our community guidelines." Maxwell almost declined immediately, but stopped himself. This was a chance to make real changes that would help others. "I'll consider it," he said instead. After Lee left, Maxwell's phone rang again. This time it was Amelia Reeves. He decided to answer. "Mr. Carter," she said, "I hope you're not upset about the video going public. I sent it to the management company, but one of my colleagues shared it with his brother who works at Channel 7 News." "What's done is done," Maxwell replied. "And please call me Maxwell." "Maxwell, then." Amelia paused. "Several residents are gathering in the community room tonight. Nothing formal, just neighbors wanting to connect. Many of them have stories about Harold's behavior over the years. Some are veterans, too. Would you consider coming?" Maxwell's first instinct was to say no. He preferred his privacy. But after the events of the past few days, privacy seemed like a lost cause. "What time?" he asked. 7 o'clock, and Maxwell? "Thank you for standing up to him, even if that wasn't your intention." The community room was usually empty on weeknights. Not today. When Maxwell arrived at 7, nearly 30 residents had gathered. They fell quiet when he entered. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Maxwell felt his face grow warm with embarrassment. "Please don't," he said, raising his hands. "I didn't do anything special." An older man in a Vietnam veteran cap approached him. "Didn't do anything special? Son, you stood up to that bully when no one else would. And from what I hear, you helped save half the planet a few years back." Maxwell recognized the man as Mr. Daniels from the first floor. "That was a team effort, sir. Thousands of people working together. My daughter was in Detroit when those alien ships came," said a woman Maxwell didn't recognize. "The shields you helped build saved her life." More residents shared stories. Family members in protected cities. Friends who had been evacuated thanks to early warning systems Maxwell's team had designed. The conversation gradually shifted from the alien conflict to Harold Simmons and his years of discriminatory behavior. "He threatened to evict me when I asked for a ramp to be installed," said an elderly woman in a wheelchair. "Said it would lower property values to have special accommodations visible. He told me my cooking smells were offensive and I should only make American food," added a man with an accent. "I was born in California." Story after story emerged, painting a picture of years of unchecked discrimination. Maxwell listened, growing increasingly troubled. How had one man been allowed to cause so much harm for so long? Amelia, who seemed to have naturally taken charge of the gathering, addressed the group. The management company has fired Harold, but that's just one person. The system that gave him power and looked the other way is still in place. We need to ensure this doesn't happen again, here or at other properties they manage. What do you suggest? Someone asked. A resident committee, to review policies and suggest changes, Amelia said. Regular meetings with management to address concerns. Transparency in how rules are enforced. Maxwell found himself nodding along. He thought of the offer to join the advisory board. Perhaps this was why he'd ended up at Orion Heights. I've been asked to join their advisory board, Maxwell said. The room fell quiet again. I initially planned to decline, but after hearing all this, I think I should accept. If you're willing to work together, we could make real changes. The discussion grew animated as residents offered ideas. Maxwell listened more than he spoke, noting who had expertise in different areas: law, social work, community organizing. There was power in this room, power that had been dormant until now. As the night progressed, Maxwell felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving the service: the energy of a team coming together around a common purpose. It wasn't defending Earth from alien invasion, but it mattered. Creating a community where everyone was treated with dignity mattered. By the time the meeting ended, they had formed a committee with Maxwell reluctantly agreeing to lead it. People exchanged phone numbers and emails, made plans for follow-up. Meetings assigned tasks to research specific issues. As Maxwell walked back to his apartment, Captain Wells called again. I just got the most interesting call from General Rivera, she said without preamble. He tells me you're joining Orion Medical as a consultant and taking charge of a community action committee. All in the same week you made national news. For someone trying to live quietly, you're making a lot of noise, Chief. Maxwell smiled despite himself. Not by choice, Captain. Isn't that always the way? There was a smile in her voice, too. The team is proud of you, Maxwell. We always knew you'd find your way back to making a difference. Just didn't expect it to start with a parking spot. For the first time since moving to Orion Heights, Maxwell slept soundly through the night, his leg pain barely noticeable. He dreamed not of alien ships and emergency repairs, but of community rooms and people working together to build something new. 6 months passed quickly at Orion Heights. The community that had once been divided by fear had grown stronger through shared purpose. The resident committee led by Maxwell had achieved more than anyone expected. The property management company had implemented new inclusive housing policies, established a dedicated veterans parking section, and created a transparent system for handling resident concerns. Maxwell stood in the newly renovated community center, watching as residents gathered for the monthly meeting. His legs still ached on rainy days, but less than before. The medical treatments developed by Orion Medical using his input had shown promising results. Quite a turnout, Amelia said, joining him by the window. In the months since they'd first met, she had become a friend and strong ally on the committee. Her legal expertise had proven invaluable in drafting policy recommendations. Maxwell nodded. Word spreads when people see real change happening. The center door opened and Mrs. Chen entered, supporting herself with a new walking cane. Behind her came Mr. Daniels in his Vietnam veteran cap, followed by at least 20 other residents. Some Maxwell knew well from committee work. Others he recognized only by face. All were there because they believed their voices mattered. Should we get started? Amelia asked. Maxwell checked his watch. Let's give it 5 more minutes. We're still waiting for the guests. The guests were representatives from 3 other housing complexes owned by the same management company. After seeing the positive changes at Orion Heights, they had reached out to learn how they might implement similar reforms. What had begun as one community standing up against discrimination was spreading. Maxwell's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Dawson. Clinical trials approved. Your design modifications made all the difference. First veteran recipients scheduled for next month. A smile crossed Maxwell's face. His work with Orion Medical had progressed faster than anyone predicted. The neural interface technology adapted from alien systems would soon help veterans with similar injuries regain more function and experience less pain. Maxwell himself had been the first test subject, which explained his improving mobility. Another text arrived, this one from Captain Wells. "We're 5 minutes out, traffic." Maxwell replied, "No rush, still gathering." He hadn't planned for his former military colleagues to become involved in his community work, but Captain Wells had volunteered her team's support from the beginning. Today, she was bringing 2 special guests who had specifically requested to see the changes at Orion Heights for themselves. As Maxwell prepared the meeting materials, he reflected on how differently things had turned out from what he'd planned. He had moved to Orion Heights seeking quiet anonymity. Instead, he had found a new mission and reconnected with his past in ways that served the future. The door opened again, and Captain Wells entered in civilian clothes. Behind her came General Rivera and a woman Maxwell recognized immediately from news broadcasts, Admiral Helena Jackson, head of the Space Defense Command. Conversations stopped as residents noticed the high-ranking officials. Maxwell stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome to Orion Heights." General Rivera shook his hand warmly. "Good to see you in person, Chief. The reports of what you've accomplished here don't do it justice." Admiral Jackson looked around the room appraisingly. "From defense shields to community shields, your talents are versatile, Mr. Carter." Maxwell felt slightly uncomfortable with the attention. "The community did the work, Admiral. I just helped organize." "Leadership takes many forms," she replied. "Sometimes it's giving orders in a crisis. Sometimes it's empowering others to solve their own problems." Captain Wells stepped in. "Should we start the meeting? I believe the Admiral has limited time." Maxwell nodded and moved to the front of the room. The residents took their seats, many stealing glances at the military visitors. Maxwell cleared his throat, and the room quieted. "Thank you all for coming today. As you can see, we have some special guests. They're here to observe how community-led initiatives like ours can serve as models for other housing developments, particularly those with veteran residents." Maxwell proceeded to outline the progress they'd made, calling on committee members to present different aspects of their work. Mr. Daniels discussed the veterans support group they'd formed. Mrs. Chen reported on accessibility improvements. Amelia presented data showing decreased complaint rates and increased resident satisfaction. When the presentations finished, Admiral Jackson stood to address the room. "What you've built here goes beyond housing policy," she said. "You've created a template for inclusive community building that has applications far beyond Orion Heights. The Defense Department is interested in implementing similar approaches in military housing and veteran transition programs nationwide." A murmur of surprise and pride rippled through the room. Additionally, the Admiral continued, "Mr. Carter's work with Orion Medical Technologies has accelerated our understanding of how alien technology can be adapted for human medical use. The neural interface systems he helped develop will change countless lives." Maxwell hadn't expected this public recognition of his other work. He felt his face warm slightly. Admiral Jackson turned to face him directly. "Mr. Carter, in recognition of both your past service during the alien conflict and your continued contributions to veteran welfare and medical advancement, Space Defense Command wishes to present you with the Civilian Service Commendation." She produced a small box from her pocket and opened it to reveal a medal. The room erupted in applause as she pinned it to Maxwell's shirt. "This is unnecessary," Maxwell said quietly. "On the contrary," the Admiral replied. "Recognition matters. You of all people should understand that now." As the ceremony concluded, and people gathered in smaller groups to talk, Maxwell found himself by the window again, looking out at the parking lot where everything had started. The visitor space where he had parked that rainy day was now part of a designated section for disabled residents and veterans. Captain Wells joined him. "Penny for your thoughts, Chief?" Maxwell smiled. "Just thinking about how sometimes the hardest battles yield the most unexpected victories." "Speaking of unexpected," Wells said, "have you heard what happened to Harold Simmons?" Maxwell shook his head. He had deliberately avoided following up on his former landlord. "He's working at a much smaller property on the other side of town," she said. "Apparently watching the news coverage of your commendation ceremony today with great interest." Maxwell laughed softly. "I hope he's learning something." As the afternoon continued, Maxwell moved through the crowd, connecting residents with the military officials, making introductions that might lead to new opportunities. The community room that had once felt alien to him now felt like home. Later, as the meeting ended and people began to leave, Mrs. Chen approached Maxwell again. "When you first came here," she said, patting his arm, "you wanted to hide who you were. Now you help others shine. This is true heroism." Maxwell looked around at the community he had never planned to join, the mission he had never expected to find, and the future he was helping to build. "Not heroism," he replied, "just recognition of ourselves and each other."